All right, a very special guest joining us on Believe in Lions here today. I'm Trevor Thompson, along with the great Glover Quin. We'll get to the great because I don't use that term loosely as it applies to him in this episode of Believe in Lions. All about that coming up. But Dave Birkett, four-time Sports Writer of the Year here in Michigan, a guy who has a Hall of Fame vote, a guy who was voted the best sportscaster by the AP in the state of Michigan last year. And the guy goes back a long time covering Lions when I was covering the beat back in the day. Dave Birkett joins us now. And Dave, thanks for taking the time out. We bring you on because you have released your version of the Detroit Lions all-21st century team, offense, defense, and special teams. It was a great read. You included our man Glover in it. We're going to talk a bit more about that. And I'm going to get out of the way and really let you guys go at this here for a little bit. But first of all, Dave, just tell us, what was the inspiration behind this?
Well, yeah, I wish it was my idea. It was not. It was one of our editors. Sort of hey, it's a downtime, right? It's a summer, like we were talking about before we came on air here. The Lions don't have anything going on for the next month. They are off until training camp comes up. And so a slow time on the calendar. So we're actually knocking them out for all the different teams in the state, the four major, pro sports plus Michigan and Michigan State. And Lions just happened to run last week. And yeah, Glover made an appearance on it. Well-deserved appearance. I picked it. But hey, he's he had some great years in Detroit, obviously. So he was one of the two safeties that made my it's a quarter of a century team, right? Since we're 25 years in, but the all-century team so far.
25 years. Who can believe the time has gone that fast? I moved here in 2000. I met you shortly after, Dave, and here we are 25 years later. Glover, what did you appreciate about the way that Dave went about his business? He's been covering that team since 2010. He's the best in the business covering this team. Nobody knows them better. What did you appreciate about this guy covering the team when you were in the room?
I mean, Dave was just cool, man. I had a good relationship. I thought I had a good relationship with Dave. I didn't really have any problems with anybody, really, but I thought Dave was cool. He always had, good questions. He was respectful. And he had good reports. I mean, I don't really try to tell the guys how to report, but I thought he had good takes, good reports, and yeah, I didn't really have much problems out of it. I mean, he used to. I mean, like I said, on Wednesdays, I would be available all day, and he would take advantage of it, and then he would ask questions, and I would answer them, and so, but. Every now and then he would try to get me on a Friday, and I'd be like, "Nah, I gotta go, man. Gotta go." But nah, man. He was good. He was good. I didn't have any problems out of Dave.
Well, we're going to get to why he chose you in a second when we do the defense. But let's go down the offensive guys named to Dave's all-century team or quarter-century team, as we've just alluded to right here. And we'll start on offense with the quarterback, Matthew Stafford. At running back, he chose Jahmyr Gibbs and James Stewart. The wide receivers, Kelvin Johnson and Amon-Ra St. Brown, really no-brainers there. Brandon Pettigrew, the tight end on Dave's team. The guards, left tackle rather, Taylor Decker, left guard, Rob Sims. The center, the recently retired Frank Ragnow. Right guard, Larry Warford, and Penei Sewell at right tackle. And I know, Glover, you played with some of these guys we're going to list as we go on. But right now, Dave, just run through the list here and tell me on offense where the challenges were in nailing guys down and the easy ones. Obviously, wide receiver was a layup. But you go through your explanations here as to why these guys made your squad on offense.
Yeah, first, I mean, it's a little tougher than just picking the best guy or the best season, right? I mean, Glover knows as well as anyone that, longevity plays a part in it. So like Sam Laporta had a really good rookie year, pretty good year last year, but he's only played 2 years. So I guess I just didn't quite feel right about putting him as the tight end over Brandon Pettigrew, who did it for, 4 or 5 years. Running back was a little different story, right? Jahmyr Gibbs, not a huge body of work, but you look at the running backs that have played for the Lions here in the last, 25 years, and most of them have only lasted a couple years in that, only had production for a year or two. So I thought Jahmyr's production stood out, plus sort of where he is in the hierarchy of NFL running backs. I think for me, the most difficult selections on offense were quarterback. Stafford did it for such a long time, 12 years, and he holds all the records in franchise history. Jared Goff has had really, 2.5, pretty amazing seasons here and taking the Lions to the NFC Championship game. There's something to be said for that. I think I went Stafford just based on the longevity and sort of the body of work And left tackle on offense was the other one that I really debated. I think Jeff Backus had a bunch of good years, and same thing. He was an Iron Man, sort of like Glover was.
Great guy too. Great
played,
guy.
12 years, 13 straight years without missing a game, barely missed a snap. And Taylor Decker, I think, has a Pro Bowl selection, and so that's sort of, he's done it for 8 years, and he's missed a few games, but he's got a big enough body of work, and maybe did it at a slightly higher level, and maybe that's why I sort of leaned Decker there. But if you pick Backus, I wouldn't argue with it. Same thing. Dominic Raiola had a really good career, but Frank Ragnow, a couple times second team All-Pro, had to go with him at center. I don't think that was recency bias with him retiring, but I think those were the toughest ones for me on offense, were quarterback and left tackle.
Glover, you played with some of these guys. You know some of these guys. You read down the list as well. I'm going to let you have at it with Dave. First of all, some thoughts maybe on some of the guys that you're familiar with, and your thoughts on questions you might have for Dave as far as his selections on offense.
Yeah, man. I mean, looking at the list, just being honest, I think Stafford is a no-brainer. I may be Stafford biased because he's my draft class, and I played 6 years with Stafford. But kind of like Dave said, I believe in longevity, not from a standpoint of accumulating stats in a longevity type of way, but I don't think people understand how difficult it is to play at a very high level year in and year out, because teams prepare for you. So like when a receiver come in the league and he goes for 1,200 yards or 1,500 yards in his rookie year, they're going to have a whole offseason to scout and game plan and try to stop him. So for him to come back in year 2 and go for another 1,600 yards, that's going to be a little more difficult. Mm-hmm. For him to come back year 3 and go for another 15, 16, it's going to be a little more difficult. And so when you got guys that can continue to do that at such a high level, and I'm a huge LeBron fan. I know we're not talking about LeBron, but when you look at a stat for him to be able to say that you can average 25 points in the NBA for 20 straight years, like, I don't think people realize how hard that is. So I gotta go with that. So I feel like, Stafford, definitely a no-brainer for me. I like Jared Goff. I just don't know if he's done enough in Detroit to overtake Stafford in that regard. I like Jahmyr Gibbs. I think, like Dave said, with the running backs, it's been hit or miss. Good year here, good year there, but I think Jahmyr Gibbs probably, at least from what I can remember. I'm not gonna say that my Lions, knowledge in the early 2000s is up there, but you know what I'm saying. I can say I don't know if they've had anybody like a Jahmyr. I will say though, Pettigrew is also my draft class. Sam Laporta. I think there are different tight ends in the way they play the game and their body of work. But I do think you can give Pettigrew the nod. Laporta he did have a good rookie year, but he's been inconsistent. He's been injured. He's had some ups and downs. So I don't think you can anoint him as sometimes guys just got to earn their way on the team. And I don't know if he's done enough to earn his way on that team. I would have probably had a tough time with wide receiver, because obviously Calvin is a no-brainer, but I think the Lions have had some good wide receivers in the last 25 years. I think Golden Tate had a case. I think Marvin had a case. I think, I wouldn't put Roy up there. I know you got Roy in there, but Roy probably had a case. So I may be a little Golden Tate biased because I played with Golden Tate, and Golden Tate did it, here for, I think, 4 years. I think Amon has only done it, 3 years, or had two good years back to back. So, but I don't know if Golden Tate ever made like All-Pro first team. I think Amon was first team, wasn't he?
Yeah.
Or second team.
Twice.
Yeah.
2-time first team All-Pro, yeah.
2-time first team. So, yeah, I mean, I get it. I guess we can. I think that's cool.
No, I mean, Glover, honestly, Golden was the one that I was debating a little bit there. And it was
I would have to make a flop.
where,
I would say it's 3 wide receivers. Said it's 2025.
Yeah, you're probably right. You're probably right about that. Take one of those running backs out.
You're right.
Just to talk the amon-ra Golden for a minute there. Amon-Ra, he's already 6th in Lions history when it comes to all-time, leading receivers, receiving yards. He's going to pass 5,000 yards this year. Golden's a couple spots behind. So just statistically, and I know, I'm with you. It's not just all about statistics there. They've both done it for a few years here in Detroit. I think the All-Pro nods was probably what put me over the top with amon-Ra. But hey, if we were going with a 3-wide set, that's probably what we should have done here in 2025. Golden would be number 3.
And it's obviously, I feel like it's obviously differences in situations. Golden played his first 2 years here. I think he was with Calvin Johnson, and so Golden was getting second player, targets, and Amon has been the guy. So Amon is getting 130 targets a season. I don't know if Golden was getting that many targets because Calvin was there getting, a lot of the targets. And so it's always different situations, but nevertheless, numbers are numbers and he's putting them up. So can't argue that. I like Taylor. I didn't really see, I know Jeff, but I didn't really see, so I can't really make a statement on that one. I like Rob. Rob's my guy. Rob Sims made the left guard. I'm a Raiola guy. Raiola is my guy. But Frank Ragnar's my guy too. I play with Frank, but Raiola, it's a tough one for me. That's a tough one for me. But I guess you got to give it to Ragnar based on his accolades. And then obviously Panay is a no-brainer. My guy Larry Warford is in there. I mean, I feel like I don't know, man. We got to look into that guard position. The guards seemed like it wasn't very very much. Yeah, it wasn't very deep.
I don't know if you have the article, but I wrote that with the Warford pick at right guard. The Lions have had 13 different guards that have started for a full season, like primary starting guards in 25 years. That's crazy.
That's crazy.
Like every other year you're talking about having a different
so nobody's been a 3-year starter other than Warford probably 4 years.
Right. Basically, Steven Peterman in the early 2000s was the only other one. So that's really been a revolving door of a position for the team this century.
And Dave, you mentioned Raiola and you mentioned Backus. I think back to those Millen era years and how tough it was for the Lions. 3 straight years without a road win at one point when I was covering them. And those guys were the only guys that talked every week, regardless of how painful and what bizarre way the Lions lost that particular game. Those two were the guys that stood up in the room and took it each and every week. So I always appreciated those guys for taking the hits during some very tough and lean years for the Lions. So those guys are always my guys and some personal favorites of mine. Let's kick it over to the defensive side.
Hey, before you go on to defense, Trev, I just want to say that those two guys, because they were part of that era, they are probably underrated. They did it at an extremely high level, never made Pro Bowls, but still an extremely high level for a long time. And part of the reason they didn't make Pro Bowls might have been because the Lions were so bad, in those 2000s. And so I think they deserve respect for the longevity, for the play that they had. Those guys are both, deserving of it. And like you said, they were both good guys in the locker room, throughout too. So without a doubt, those guys, deserve a mention if nothing else. I went, the accolades. It's sort of like the Hall of Fame thing to me, right? Like longevity means something, like Glover said. Those accolades, when you start getting all-pro all-pro selections, that means a little something too in the grand scheme of things. You're being recognized, as one of the best at your position for that year or some stretch of time. So that was a big, something that really, I guess, turned some of those votes in the guys' favors. Yeah.
And those were lean years, and those guys showed up and played every single week. Very durable guys, both of them, Raiola and Backus. Okay, let's go to the defensive side of things now and start on the defensive end. You got Aiden Hutchinson early in his career, but he already gets the nod. Ziggy Ansah also on the defensive end. The tackles, your boy Suh and Sean Rogers named the tackle as well. At the linebacker, you had DeAndre Levy, Stephen Tulloch, and Alex Anzalone. Then the cornerbacks, Darius Slay and Dre Bly. The safeties, the highly paid Kirby Joseph, and our man, the great Glover Quin. And Glover, I just got a question for you. Before I ask that, I'll name the special teamers as well. Jason Hansen as the kicker. Love Jason Hansen. Saw him recently at a golf outing. Punter was Jack Fox. Long snapper, Don Mulbach. And the kick return punt returner, Jamal Agnew. So my question to you before we get to Dave on this one, Glover, congratulations, first of all. You deserve all the flowers for what you're able to do here throughout your 10-year career. Congrats to you. But when a guy puts a list together like this and he names a quarter-century team or an all-century team or whatever you want to call it at this point, 25 years into the 2000, what does it mean to a guy to be on this list? What does it mean to you to be on this list?
I mean, it means a lot, honestly. I mean, when you think about, we're not talking about, your local little league football team or your local high school football team. We're talking about a team that's a part of the National Football League. So obviously it's a journey. It's a path to just even get to be able to play on this team. And you're playing against the best with the best in the entire world. And so for 25 years to be recognized as one of the top guys to play in this organization, it means a lot. I mean, I think it means a lot. I think it's a great accomplishment. And for somebody like me, I came in as a fourth rounder and I came in as a cornerback. And so to move to safety and to be able to have the career that I had, go to Detroit, do some of the things that I did, that was my whole thing when I played. I never, and I know people will say whatever, but I never really played the game for the money. I never really played the game for all of the extra stuff that came with the game. I really only played the game for the respect. And I felt like if I earn the respect of my teammates, if I earn the respect of other players around the league, then obviously you're doing something right. Obviously you're playing at a high level. And if you're doing something right and playing at a high level, all the other stuff will just come along with that. So for me to get recognized on things like that means that I earn the respect of media members, I earn the respect of my teammates, and I earn the respect of my peers around the league. And so for me, that was a good thing.
When it came to putting Glover on the team, Dave, what was it that did it for you?
Yeah, well, let me tell you, first of all, the Lions have had some good safeties in the past 25 years, right? I mean, Brian Branch wasn't on that team. I think he's a really good player. He has all-pro potential to me. Glover played with a guy, James Ahedebo, who had a couple good years. Quandre Diggs, and now Quandre obviously started in the slot. He's playing a lot of nickel when he was with the Lions early on, but his best years were probably in Seattle. But there's some good safeties, and so I'd never wavered in terms of either Glover or Kirby, I don't think. But to make Glover one of those selections, I do think it's not like picking from that right guard where there's a different starter every other year, right? Lions have had some good safeties. So, but I think when it comes to Glover and his accolades, let's say, I mean, first of all, that 2014 Lions defense was something. And I know that the success on the field in the playoffs didn't happen. That was a really, really good unit. And he had a really, really good season. I think 7 interceptions that year, Glover, if I'm not right, or if I'm not mistaken, right? So, he was all-pro or second-team all-pro that year. And it wasn't just a one-year thing. It's sort of, that's what I say when it comes to my Hall of Fame vote too, right? I'm looking at more than just 1 year. It's sort of that snapshot in time. And so Glover did it for a couple of years there straight, where he was one of the better safeties in the NFL, had a big role on a really good defensive team. And so, I think there's some value in that too. When you are a part of the success of a team, one of the leaders on the team, that goes a long way in my opinion.
So Glover, you've got teammates you played with and now teammates who are teammates as a part of this 21st century team. What are your thoughts of the guys on D and special teams? Big Jason Hansen guy. I still love Jason Hansen.
Hey man, all I'm gonna say is I see a lot of my guys on here, man.
Right.
I mean,
yeah, for sure.
I mean, my dog Sue on here, Ziggy, Levy, Tully, Slay. I mean, we got six guys from the 2014 defense. 6 guys.
Today's point, pretty good squad.
6 of us. And I mean, I would say, you know, some of that, you know, 2014, that's been over, you know, 10 years, 11 years ago. So we've had time to, you know, marinate on it. You know, these guys that are playing right now, they're good as well. It's just sometimes it's like we said by Sam, like they just done it for a year. They just done it for, you know, 2 years. And so I do think, you know, the trajectory that Brian is on, I do think he could definitely be on this list. I do think, you know, obviously Kirby is on the list. So I do think these guys that are playing right now are good football players. Don't get me wrong. But it's a lot of my guys on the list, man. It's a lot of my guys. So I like saying that, you know what I'm saying? Shows that we did have a good unit. And I would say, you know, when I came here in 2013, when I came on my visit, Martin Mayhew was the GM, and Martin was like, you know, we want to change the culture. We want to change the trajectory of the Detroit Lions, and we want you to be a part of that. Like, we want you to come be a part of that. And so I took on that challenge. And when I came in, you know, things were not great in 2013. They were not great. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. They were not great. But I came in and that was my goal, to try to change the culture. And I'm not going to even sugarcoat it. I went at the top guys. And Suh was one of the top guys defensively. And I used to challenge Suh. I didn't back down from Suh. I would let Suh know what we needed from him from a leadership standpoint, what we needed from him from a physicality standpoint. And I don't know if he ever experienced anything like that because he was Suh. You know what I'm saying? And most people probably just let Suh do whatever Suh wanted to do. But I had respect for Suh, so I couldn't just let him do what he wanted to do if it wasn't benefiting or if it wasn't helping us as a unit. And I think he grew to respect that about me, and we end up having a great relationship. And so, but that was the start. You know, that 2014 year, you know, that was kind of the start of us moving in a good trajectory, kind of going upwards. And then, you know, we had the coaching change and it kind of stalemated and went downhill a little bit. And then now they've elevated and went back up there. So I think, you know, it's good to see a lot of the guys on this list from those years that were really trying to change the national trajectory of what people thought of the Lions defense.
Just speak to some of that, Dave, some of those personalities, 6 guys from that 2014 team on your team here for the 21st century. What made that group special on and off the field from your perspective?
Yeah, I mean, you know, you go back and look at the numbers, and I think what that defense was able to do both against the run and against the pass, you know, obviously Ndamukong had a great year, great 5-year run in Detroit, 3 first-team All-Pro selections there. He was a force, up front, but it was at every level. I mean, you know, DeAndre Levy was a really, really good linebacker. And if not for the injuries, you know, people might be, talking about him or looking at his career a little bit different if he was able to sustain that a little bit more. But even the short time that he played, he was really, really good. And then in the back end, obviously you had Glover. I mean, Darius Slay was young at the time, but, you know, they had some talent in the back end too. And so that was sort of the epitome of how you put a defense together, right? You want some playmakers at every level, and they were able to do that. They were able to get after the passer. They were able to make some plays in the middle of the field, and then that back end could limit those big plays and make some plays too. So, look, you know, everybody knows the early 2000s Lions, they weren't very good teams, and when this run here started, it was offensive based those first year or two, and the defense has come along. And as Glover said, there's some really good young players on that defense now, but I think that 2014 team, for the mix of vets and young players, Ziggy was a young guy on that team, Darius Slay, like we said, that's really been the best Lions defense, I think, of the past at least 25 years, probably back into the early 90s as well.
Look, 25. Go ahead, Glover.
Hold on. You know what? This is funny because I try not to. I don't get into a lot of these things, but they do come up, and I do get asked about a lot of these things. And so, obviously, the Lions are hot, and people would always ask me, about the 2014 team against the current team, and the offensive and the defensive, and that's a tough one. I try to stay out of it, but it's a tough one because I do think that 2014 team was special. It was the timing, the timing was tough on us. We didn't get it done, obviously, but I do think that was probably one of the most special teams that,
Yeah, we all know how it ended too, and had it ended a little different that year, I think that team would be, and that defense might be looked at a little bit different too.
Yeah, that's true too. That's true too.
Yeah.
I got this for both of you guys. I'm wondering who you each think, if you look 25 years down the road, who on this current team will we be talking about 25 years from now? Who's going to leave that kind of impression, a lasting impression on you, Dave, Glover? Who do you got?
That's a great question.
I'll go first. I mean, like I said, it's to me, it's the can you how many times can you do it, and how high of a level can you play at it? I mean, I think that goes for all of those guys because this run has just kind of started. And I think that goes for every last one of those guys. I think Brian Branch is off to an incredible start, but I mean, he's done it for 2 years. You know what I'm saying? If he doesn't do it for the next 4, 5, 6 years, he's going to be a great player that did it for 2 years. And you also got to look at, contract situations. You know what I'm saying? Like, a guy can have a great 2 years, and then all of a sudden he ends up on a different team due to free agency or things like that, and goes on and have a great career, but you only did it for 2 years in Detroit, and we can't include you because you went to this, like kind of like what you were saying about Quandre, right? Quandre had some great years, but when you think about it, he started coming on like that as a safety in Detroit, but then he went to Seattle, and then he had good years. So you had to say, well, career-wise, he's had a great career, but Detroit-wise, would he be on any of those teams? And it's probably not, right? So that's kind of how you got to look at it. So I think for me, if those guys stay on the same trajectory, I do think we'll be talking about, and I'm going to talk from a defensive standpoint. I do think we'll talk about Kirby. I do think we'll talk about Brian. I think we'll talk about Aiden. And
that might be it defensively. I mean, if I'm not to interrupt, but I think the same as Glover on this. Like, I think the world of Kirby Joseph and Brian Branch, best safety tandem in the NFL right now, right? Like, Kirby's just a great ball hawk back there. I mean, Brian makes plays all over the field. A little more longevity out of both those guys, and you might be looking at them like, wow, these are two really, really good safeties. Aiden, same thing. He's only done it for a couple of years, but he has the potential to go down as one of the better pass rushers in this franchise history. And so when I look at that question, Trev, it's sort of the same thing. Like, Brian's probably the guy that's not on the team that you can look at 25 years from now, or you can think in your head, like, maybe he has that type of career that can get on it. But the other guy, like an Aiden, a Panay, even Amon-Ra, you know what? Like, he and I have talked about this in the locker room a couple times. He's been a first-team All-Pro selection twice. You know what? The baseline for like a Hall of Fame player, if you are 3 or more times first-team All-Pro, like, you usually get discussed at least in that top 15 that we discuss every year. So, like, he's closing in on having the accolades to be there. And Ndamukong Suh, he's going to probably get in that room to be talked about here in a couple of years because he was a 3-time first-team All-Pro selection in Detroit. So I think Panay, Aiden, Amon-Ra, based on the accolades, based on the way they play, maybe they have the potential to go down as all-timers. But the guy that's not on that list that maybe we're talking about, as being one of those guys, I think Brian Branch is a guy that absolutely could be on that list years from now.
Just a couple of years in for Aiden, how did he make your squad, Dave? Obviously, he's impressive right now, and he's what they look like. But honestly, what is it for right now at this point in his career?
So that was a little bit of a tough one for me, because I think there's a couple defensive ends. Ziggy, was on there. Cliff Averill, he had some good years in Detroit. Aiden, I sort of looked at the numbers, looked at the accolades. Aiden's sacks per game. I mean, just some of the analytical stuff sort of leans Aiden over those other two guys. And I think that's probably why I did it. But I thought Cliff Averill was deserving too. I mean, Cliff was a really good player. He was so good, the Lions had to franchise him, right? And then he went and got paid in Seattle. And so he was a good player that's probably deserving of being on there as well. So, but Aiden, I think Aiden is considered one of the top, let's just say 5 or 6 defensive ends in the NFL right now. And I don't know that Ziggy and Cliff were at the peak of their time in Detroit were considered that, though they both had very good, careers in Detroit. So that's why I gave Aiden the edge over there and put him on that team.
He didn't make your list, but you did mention him in the article, and one of my all-time favorite guys too, Robert Porcher. Shout out to Robert Porcher. He was a hell of a Lion during his time.
And that was just a matter of longevity in the 2000s for him. But obviously he's one of the best to do it in Detroit.
Dave, you've got a Hall of Fame vote. We've talked a bit about the Hall of Fame. You guys have mentioned it along the way. Who on this team, or who in your mind, when it comes time to vote, when the time is right for that particular player, is going to get your vote for the Hall at this point?
That's a good question. I mean, Ndamukong Suh is the next one that's probably going to come up for discussion. I'd love to hear Glover's thoughts on, whether Suh is worthy of that. I talked to Gerald McCoy at the Super Bowl last year a little bit about, whether Suh's deserving and kind of what it takes to kind of go down as a defensive tackle. And look, Suh was dominant in Detroit. He had that 5-year stretch. I wonder if nationally, because he took the money and went to Miami and, things didn't quite work out there, how that is viewed in the context of his entire career. He did get a Super Bowl late in his career. I think he's worthy of so the way it works for, viewers out there who don't know, right, there's a big list of 125 or so players that gets whittled down to 25. We vote from 25 to 15. Once you're in the final 15, we have a meeting in January and we discuss each of those 15 players in length. And so I think Ndamukong will be in that 15 at some point in time. I think he's up for election next year will be the first year, if I'm not mistaken, 26 or 27. So I do think he'll get discussed. Whether he gets in, I don't know. Again, I'd love to hear Glover's thoughts on that. And then, Panay, just the way that he's doing it, again, considered, one of the best tackles in the NFL right now and has for a couple of years, still super young. Still has some runway to get better. So that's a guy I absolutely could see being in the discussion one day down the road. The other guys, it's too early in their career, I think, to say anything about those.
Dave wanted your thoughts, Glover. So give them.
Suh's my guy. Suh's my guy, but I'm gonna be, I'm gonna have to just, give it the podcast, the TV, whatever, the unbiased answer. I think Suh has had a great career. I do think the reputation that he had in Detroit, I do think the lack of playoff success he had in Detroit, I do think those things will hurt him when it comes to the Hall of Fame stuff. I think, people will look at the careers of what Aaron Donald was able to do down there, what J.J. Watt was able to do down there, some of those guys. And I think nationally, perception-wise, they'll feel like, okay, that right there is the Hall of Fame level. And I don't know if nationally the voters would say, okay, that's Suh. From a dominant standpoint, I think yes, but I just don't know if the winning that we were able to do in Detroit at the time or in his time, because he got there in 2010, and like I said, we didn't really have much playoff success, even though we made it there. I don't think he had a playoff win until he left and maybe got with these last couple teams. And so I think it's going to be stuff like that hurts his case. But I do feel like he's one of the top defensive tackles that's played obviously in recent years. And so I do think he should be in the conversation. I just think it's going to be hard for them to give him that vote.
When you hear thoughts, Dave, of a guy who played with him and a guy who obviously is an elite level himself, do you get influenced by any of that, or do you have your own thoughts of the guys that are part of the process? You get feedback from them, or what are your thoughts when you hear something like that from a guy like?
Yeah, no, I certainly value the opinions of people that know a heck of a lot more than me. That played the game and that were that deeply involved in it. And when it comes time every year for our Hall of Fame voting, those are I talk to people whose opinions I respect, coaches or players or administrators, to sort of gather what they think about the class. And I can't argue with anything that Glover said. I think he's right, and I think you throw Suh's reputation in there too, and that may hurt him a little bit. The one thing is, again, just having been a part of this process, the Hall of Fame process that is now for 10 years, there are some sort of minimum standards, I guess, let's call it, right? If you are an all-decade player, like, you get in eventually. And Ndamukong Suh was an all-decade player at defensive tackle. And so I think Glover's right that, Aaron Donald's a lock. He's the first ballot Hall of Famer. J.J. Watt's getting in. And Ndamukong's probably third among defensive tackles in the 2010s. So maybe he does get in. Maybe it takes a few years. Maybe it takes 10 years. I don't know if he's going to get in, but I think – maybe he has a case, or that case will get stronger as time goes on based on some of the accolades that he has. And so, look, being named to this team, it doesn't mean anything, in the all pros and the Pro Bowls, like, we all kind of know, okay, whatever, who's voting on that? That's the media, the players, the Pro Bowl stuff, it is what it is. But at the end of the day, those things, especially the most important accolades, like the all pro teams, those things do matter in the eyes of some of the voters and some of the people who help, write history of the game. So will Suh get in? I don't know. That's the case that we'll have to talk to a whole bunch of players that he played with and against when it comes time. But I do think he will get in the discussion at the very least too.
And see, Dave, I had this idea, and I know the Pro Bowl is all these All-Star games are struggling, right? I get it. But I had this idea. This was back probably when I was playing and a little bit afterwards. And I felt like it would make the Pro Bowl selections that much more meaningful to players. And this was my idea. You know how, like, you have the award shows, right? You have the Grammys and all this stuff, right? And you see some of these artists and they may be like a 15-time Grammy nominee, right? But they only won a Grammy maybe once. But being a 15-time Grammy nominee lets everybody know that for 15 whatevers, they did something that was worthy of a Grammy, because the nomination, they have a whole show for nominations to see who's up for these awards. And I just feel like between coaches, scouts, media, executives, people that watch the games, I really feel like that you guys by week 13 can comprise a list of guys who are nominated for the Pro Bowl. I don't feel like everybody should be on the Pro Bowl. It should be an honor to be on the Pro Bowl ballot, period. Yeah. You shouldn't be able to get on the Pro Bowl ballot just because you played for a popular team and people vote. Like, you shouldn't be on the ballot. It should be a privilege just to be on the ballot, because just because you don't make the Pro Bowl doesn't mean you didn't have a great season that was worthy of a Pro Bowl vote. You just didn't get voted in. But if you can say, I was a 10-time Pro Bowl nominee, that shows, hey, man, for 10 years, you balled.
Yeah.
You just didn't get the Pro Bowl nod, but you balled for 10 years. So if you comprise a list And then now it's an honor just to be on the ballot. And then you let the fans and people vote from those guys. Not everybody don't get on. You get to vote from these guys. These are the people that are up for the Pro Bowl. I think it'd just be more meaningful, because when you see guys getting votes that's not even playing or that's not even having a great season, they're leading in votes, you're like, what is going on? Just because they got a high social media following and fans vote, like, guys, these guys are, and I may be passionate about it because I do feel like there were years in my career in Detroit that I had better seasons than other players that got Pro Bowl nods based off of, and I don't really want to be like, there were guys getting Pro Bowl nods and they were only playing 7 games out of the year. And they were making the Pro Bowl, like making it, not not alternates. They were making it. And I just feel like you didn't even deserve to be on the ballot that year. That don't mean you wasn't a great player. That just means this year, because the Pro Bowl is based off year to year. That means this year you wasn't a Pro Bowl player, and that's okay.
I think there has to be a better way to recognize, like Glover said, sort of who is at the upper echelon of, playing, because the Pro Bowl has become so watered down. And when it comes to the Hall of Fame stuff, I can honestly say I don't think most people consider Pro Bowl a good barometer of who's worthy of that. All Pro is a little different because it's 2 players at a position usually, right? Or 1 player in some cases, so that you're really recognized as the best of the best. You're not, the fourth alternate going at whatever position, which means you're the 10th best player in a conference, sometimes. Right. So, I'll just to share this to sort of emphasize Glover's point. Who was this year? Eric Allen from the Philadelphia Eagles. He got in the Hall of Fame this year. It was towards the end of his 20 years, if I'm not mistaken, that he was up for nomination. And I was talking to a handful of players from the 90s about him. And I guess I didn't realize this. You know it, but you don't realize until you hear from players or you hear from some of their contemporaries that the other cornerbacks, like he was only, he didn't have the same accolades that everybody else did. But to Glover's point, the other cornerbacks that he was competing with were Deion Sanders, Aeneas Williams, Rod Woodson, right? Like 3 other first ballot Hall of Famers, basically. So Eric Allen was a really, really good player during his time, one of the best cornerbacks in the game. But because he didn't have those accolades, he sat on that ballot for 20 years or whatever it was before he was inducted. So I do think there are players that you have to look beyond the accolades, obviously. So maybe there is another way. I don't know if the NFL would be up for Glover's way because, they want to maximize the money and get all the fans involved and everything. But there should be a better way to contextualize how good a player is versus peers.
But I think the fans want to see the best players. So if it's an honor, like the Pro Bowl took a hit when they moved the Pro Bowl to the week before the Super Bowl. It took a hit because now you start bringing guys that wasn't supposed to be there because a lot of the stars that people want to see were not coming because they were playing in the Super Bowl, right? Mm-hmm. So it started going downhill when they did that. But if it means something to be there, then you're going to get the best guys there. Like Patrick Mahomes isn't showing up to the Pro Bowl because it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter, right? Like those, but that's who the fans want to see. Like they don't want to see, I don't even know. I don't want to hate on people, but you get what I'm saying. You know what I'm saying? Like they want to see the best guys. And if it means something to have the best of the best there, because that's another reason why I feel like the game started to take a little hit too, because you got players who were your top players in certain positions that made it. And then you got some of these players who, like Dave said, they was the 4th alternate, but 2 guys got hurt, 2 guys went to the Super Bowl, and now you got this guy that came in, he got a chip on his shoulder. He out there playing a little harder than some of the and now you see what I'm saying? So if you got the top players, trust me, the top players know how to play the game to where they can play. They're probably not going to play like the Super Bowl, but they can play and they can entertain and it'll be good. When you start mixing, trust me, when you start mixing, that's like putting a lot of these rookies that you see in the preseason, it's like putting them out there. It get a little different. So,
yeah.
you know what I'm saying? You're never going to get Patrick Mahomes to the Pro Bowl ever. The only way Patrick Mahomes would go to the Pro Bowl is if he just want to say that I went one time. That's it. He's not going. I wouldn't go. But if it meant something, you know what I'm saying? Like, just imagine sitting around on a Thursday night. Probably could do it on a Saturday night. Probably a Saturday night. Just imagine on a Saturday night in early December, mid-December, because the season goes a little longer now. And it's a Saturday night. And he got the Pro Bowl nomination show. And everybody's sitting back wondering, am I going to be on the list? Am I going to be on the list, man?
Whoever wants a front row ticket, Dave.
Am I going to be on the list? And then you get on the list.
Make these things made for TV, so maybe he is on to something.
And then you get on the list, and it's just like, wow. You know what I'm saying? Like, imagine from the vote, obviously it is what it is. From the betting standpoint, the odds are like, and I don't really gamble like that, but just imagine, like, that's a big thing. Who's going to be on the ballot?
That's what they do these days. Everything's up for a bet.
You know what I'm saying? And I'm sure you'll have, some of the guys who they'll be like, okay, he's definitely a no-brainer. But those last 2 to 3, because I would say out of quarterbacks, you probably got to put, six guys on there, right? In the top 3 make the Pro Bowl. I would feel like you could say 6, right? Five guys on the nominated. You gotta have room for people to get voted out, obviously. So you can't say we're only going to do 3 guys. Well, then all 3 of them are going to make it. So you got to do at least 6 or 5, or I don't know. But I think it would be dope. I think it would be a good idea.
Roger Goodell, Glover Quin on line 1. He's got some ideas for you. Dave, I hope you had a lot of fun putting this list together. I know you're going to get a lot of feedback from your viewers, from your readers and viewers of this podcast, and everybody's got an opinion on this, including Glover. But congrats to our guy for making your list, and congrats for putting together the all-21st century Lions team to this point in the 21st century. Appreciate you joining us on Believe in Lions. Hope everybody enjoys this, and we will see you next time.